Financial freedom is one of the most universally desired goals in the world. Ask almost anyone what they want from their financial life, and some version of it comes up. Not having to worry about money, having enough that work becomes a choice rather than a necessity, being able to spend time on what matters most without a paycheck being the deciding factor. Almost everyone wants it. A very small percentage of people actually achieve it, and the gap between those two groups is not explained by income, by luck, or by opportunity as much as most people assume. The reason most people never become financially free is not that financial freedom is out of reach for ordinary people. It is not. The mathematics of compound growth, tax-advantaged investing, and consistent saving make financial freedom genuinely achievable for a person with a moderate income and a long enough time horizon. The reason most people never get there is a specific set of patterns, behavioral, psychological, and systemic, that keep them permanently stuck in a cycle of earning and spending without ever building the asset base that financial freedom requires. Today, we are going through those patterns honestly and in detail. Not to be discouraging, quite the opposite. Understanding exactly why financial freedom eludes most people is the first step toward making sure it does not elude you. Let's get into it. Reason 1. They never define what financial freedom actually means to them. The first reason is the one that makes all the others inevitable. Most people who say they want financial freedom have never defined what it actually means for their specific life. They have a feeling, a vague sense of not having to worry about money, but no concrete picture of what that looks like in numbers, in timeline, or in daily reality. Financial freedom is not a feeling, it is a mathematical condition. It is the point at which your passive income from investments, property, or other assets covers your essential living expenses without requiring you to sell your time for money. Reaching that condition requires knowing 3 specific numbers. First, what are your monthly essential expenses? The amount you genuinely need to live the life you want, not your current spending, but what you actually need. Second, what annual income do those monthly expenses require? Third, what size portfolio, generating returns at a sustainable withdrawal rate, would produce that annual income indefinitely? Using the 4% rule as a guide, which suggests a diversified portfolio can sustain a 4% annual withdrawal rate indefinitely based on historical market returns, financial freedom requires a portfolio of 25 times your annual essential expenses. If you need $900,000 per year to live comfortably, financial freedom requires a portfolio of $900,000. If you need $1,200,000, the target is $1.2 million. These are specific, achievable numbers, but most people never calculate them because they have never defined what financial freedom would actually cost them. Without a specific target, there is no plan. Without a plan, there is no path. Without a path, financial freedom remains permanently vague and permanently out of reach. Reason 2. They treat lifestyle as fixed and income as the variable. One of the most deeply embedded assumptions in how most people think about building wealth is that their lifestyle is essentially fixed, that they have certain standards of living that are non-negotiable, and that the solution to building financial freedom is simply to earn more. More income will solve the problem. A raise, a promotion, a better job, a side hustle. More money coming in will eventually create enough surplus to build toward freedom. The problem with this assumption is that it places the entire burden of progress on income growth while leaving spending completely unexamined. And as we have established in previous videos, lifestyle inflation means that spending reliably expands to meet income growth, leaving the gap between earnings and expenses, the gap where wealth is built, perpetually narrow regardless of how much more is being earned. Treating lifestyle as fixed and waiting for income to grow large enough to create surplus is a strategy that very rarely produces financial freedom and very consistently produces a more expensive version of financial stagnation. The more effective approach is to treat both lifestyle and income as variables, to ask not only how can I earn more, but also what is the minimum lifestyle cost that still allows me to live well and with genuine satisfaction, and to be willing to make real reductions in spending rather than waiting indefinitely for income to outpace the lifestyle.
The fastest path to financial freedom for most people involves both increasing income and decreasing the cost of the lifestyle they are trying to fund. One without the other is significantly slower. Both together can compress a 30-year timeline into 15 or even 10 years for someone who applies them aggressively and consistently. Reason 3. They underestimate how long it actually takes. Financial freedom through investing is not quick. For most people, on average incomes following a sensible strategy, it takes somewhere between 15 and 30 years of consistent effort. This is not a discouraging timeline, it is a realistic one, and understanding it is essential for maintaining the behavior that makes it possible. The problem is that most people underestimate the timeline and then give up when progress feels too slow. In the early years of investing, the numbers feel almost insultingly small. You invest $300 a month faithfully for a year, and your portfolio is worth maybe $3,800. You invest for 3 years, and it is worth $13,000. The growth feels linear and modest, and entirely disproportionate to the effort and discipline involved. What most people do not viscerally feel in the early years is what is about to happen in the later years. Compound growth is backloaded. The first decade of consistent investing does much less of the visible work than the second and third decades. A portfolio that grows to $50,000 over 10 years of consistent contributions will, if left alone with continued contributions at the same rate, often reach $200,000 or more in the second decade, and potentially $600,000 or more in the third. The mathematical acceleration in the back half of the compounding period is extraordinary, but you only benefit from it if you stayed the course through the front half when progress felt agonizingly slow. Most people do not. They get discouraged, they redirect the money to lifestyle, and they restart the clock multiple times, each restart resetting the compounding acceleration and extending the timeline indefinitely.
Reason 4. They let debt permanently drain the engine. Consumer debt is the single most effective mechanism for preventing financial freedom that the modern financial system has ever produced. It is not designed maliciously, it is simply the natural outcome of a system where lending is profitable and borrowing is easy. But the effect on financial freedom timelines is devastating and deeply underappreciated. Every dollar that goes to servicing consumer debt is a dollar that cannot go into an investment that compounds. The damage is not just the dollar itself, it is the compounding that dollar would have generated over the following decades. A $500 monthly car payment maintained for 10 years does not just cost $60,000. At a 10% investment return, it costs roughly $96,000 in foregone compound growth over that same period. A $10,000 credit card balance carried for 5 years at 22% interest does not just cost $10,000 plus interest charges. It costs every dollar of compound growth those payments could have generated if invested instead. The people who achieve financial freedom on average incomes almost universally have very low consumer debt loads, not because they never borrowed, but because they treated debt elimination as a financial priority rather than a background condition to be managed indefinitely. They paid off high-interest balances aggressively. They drove older cars rather than financing new ones. They made deliberate choices to minimize the ongoing drain of debt service on the cash flow that should have been building their investment portfolio. Eliminating consumer debt and keeping it eliminated is one of the most direct accelerants of the financial freedom timeline available. If this is helping you see more clearly why financial freedom stays out of reach for most people and what actually needs to change, please hit the like button and subscribe to this channel right now. New content every week, always practical, always free. I would genuinely love to have you along for what is coming. Now, let's finish this off. Reason 5. They never build the habits that make freedom possible. Financial freedom is not achieved through a single brilliant financial decision. It is the accumulated result of thousands of small, correct financial decisions made consistently over many years. The vehicle for making those decisions consistently, rather than correctly only when motivated and then reverting when life gets busy or stressful, is habit. The specific habits that make financial freedom possible are not complicated.
automating savings and investments so they happen without a decision, reviewing spending monthly so that drift is caught early, increasing investment contributions whenever income increases, staying invested during market downturns rather than selling, avoiding new consumer debt. These are not intellectually difficult behaviors, but doing them consistently over 10 or 20 years through the inevitable disruptions of job changes, relationship changes, family changes, and economic changes requires that they be embedded as habits rather than conscious choices that depend on ongoing motivation. Most people approach personal finance as a series of decisions rather than a system of habits. They decide to save more when they feel financially anxious and revert to old patterns when the anxiety fades. They decide to invest during periods of market optimism and stop during downturns. Decisions are unreliable over long time horizons. Automated habits are not. Building the specific habits that drive financial freedom and automating them so they do not depend on motivation is what bridges the gap between wanting financial freedom and actually achieving it.
Reason 6. They wait for the perfect moment that never arrives. There is always a reason to wait. The market is too high right now, there is an election coming up, the economy looks uncertain, interest rates are rising. I'll start properly when I have paid off this debt, when I have gotten this raise, when the kids are older, when things calm down a little. The list of reasons to delay is infinite and self-replenishing. The moment one reason is resolved, another appears to take its place, and so the starting point of serious financial freedom building keeps getting pushed forward one reasonable-sounding delay at a time. The cost of these delays is not abstract. Every year of delayed investing is a year of compound growth that cannot be recovered. A person who starts building toward financial freedom at 25 and a person who starts at 35 with identical incomes, identical savings rates, and identical investment strategies from their respective start dates will arrive at retirement with dramatically different financial positions. Not because the 35-year-old did anything wrong after they started, but because the 10 years of compound growth between 25 and 35 cannot be recreated by any amount of future effort or investment. The honest truth about the perfect moment to start building financial freedom is that it does not exist and never will. There will always be uncertainty. There will always be competing priorities. There will always be a reasonable argument for waiting a little longer. The people who achieve financial freedom are not the ones who found the perfect moment. They are the ones who started in an imperfect moment and kept going through all the imperfect moments that followed. Starting imperfectly today is worth infinitely more than starting perfectly at some hypothetical future point that never materializes. Reason 7. They confuse financial freedom with retirement. A final reason that prevents many people from ever achieving financial freedom is a fundamental misunderstanding of what it actually is. Many people confuse financial freedom with retirement, with stopping work entirely, usually at a traditional retirement age in their mid-60s. And because reaching that condition feels distant and abstract for most of their working life, it remains a vague future goal rather than an active present pursuit. Financial freedom and retirement are not the same thing. Financial freedom simply means that work becomes optional, that you have enough income from assets to cover your expenses without being forced to sell your time. Many financially free people continue working because they enjoy what they do. Many work less intensely or pivot to work they find more meaningful but that pays less. Some do stop working entirely. The point is that the choice is theirs rather than the employer's. Understanding financial freedom this way, as optionality rather than cessation, makes it a far more motivating and achievable goal. It is not about waiting until 65 to stop working. It is about reaching the point, potentially in your 40s or 50s or even earlier for aggressive savers, where every day you show up to work, it is because you want to rather than because you have to. That is a genuinely transformative shift in the quality of a person's relationship with their work, their time, and their life. And it is achievable, but only by people who understand clearly what it is, why most people miss it, and what specifically needs to be done differently to get there. 7 reasons why most people never become financially free. They never define what financial freedom actually means for their specific life in concrete numbers. They treat lifestyle as fixed and wait passively for income to solve the problem. They underestimate the timeline and quit during the slow early years before compound growth accelerates. They allow consumer debt to permanently drain the cash flow that should be building their investment portfolio. They rely on decisions and motivation rather than building the automated habits that sustain progress through inevitable disruptions. They wait for a perfect moment that never arrives and lose irreplaceable years of compound growth in the process. And they confuse financial freedom with retirement and make it a distant abstract goal rather than a concrete achievable target with a specific number and a real plan behind it. Financial freedom is not reserved for the exceptionally talented, the extraordinarily lucky, or the unusually high-earning. It is achievable for ordinary people with ordinary incomes who understand what it actually requires and are willing to make the decisions and build the habits that produce it consistently over time. The path is clear, the tools are available. What changes the outcome is the decision to start and the commitment to continue. Everything referenced today is linked in the description below, along with resources that will help you calculate your own financial freedom number and build a real plan for reaching it. Go check those out after this. Drop a comment and tell me, what is the biggest thing standing between you and financial freedom right now? I read every single comment, and I find these conversations genuinely valuable. And please subscribe to this channel if you have not already. New content every week, always practical, always free. If this video helped clarify why financial freedom stays out of reach for most people, the next one is going to be equally eye-opening. We are breaking down the biggest financial mistakes people make in their 20s, 30s, and 40s, the decade-specific decisions that either build the foundation for financial freedom or quietly undermine it for years to come. It is one of the most practically useful videos I have made, and I think it will make a lot of things click into place regardless of what decade you are in right now.